Hello, everybody, and welcome to the House of Nostalgia. Today's video is about Miss Diahann Carroll. She had a career that spanned for over 60 years. She was a trailblazer in the entertainment industry, becoming the first Black woman to win a Tony and the first Black woman to receive her own television show playing the role of a professional instead of a domestic worker, which was the only roles being offered to Black women at that time. In the 80s, she starred as Dominique Devereaux in the primetime television soap opera Dynasty. She also had a very intriguing love life, which almost seemed to overshadow her accomplishments. Carroll opened up a little about her private life in her two books, The Legs Are the First Thing to Go, and Diahann, an Autobiography. Let's examine the career, life, and loves of Miss Diahann Carroll. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share the video. Carroll Diahann Johnson was born July 17, 1935 in the Bronx, New York. She was raised by her parents, John and Mabel Johnson, and at the age of 15, she started modeling for Ebony magazine. After high school, she briefly attended New York University and quit to follow her dreams of becoming an entertainer. And in 1954, her career was off to a running start. She had a supporting role in the all-Black cast of the movie Carmen Jones. The movie was produced and directed by Otto Preminger. And at the age of 19, she was acting alongside of legends like Dorothy Dandridge, Pearl Bailey, and Harry Belafonte. In that same year, Carroll starred on Broadway in Harold Arlen musical House of Flowers. She played the part of Ottilie alias Violet and was nominated for a Tony. She married her first husband, Monty Kaye, in 1956, and they had a daughter in 1960, which ended up being her only child. In 1959, Carroll had a small part in the musical Porgy and Bess, and it was also directed by Otto Preminger. Carroll had issues about taking the role. She felt that the characters in the movie were stereotyped. A lot of insiders involved with this movie had a lot of issues with it. Carroll stated in quite a few of her interviews that she really wanted to be a singer. So by this being a musical, no one was allowed to actually sing. During the making of this movie is when Carroll met Sidney Poitier. He had already appeared in 12 movies, including two of my favorites at that time, 1955, Blackboard Jungle, and 1958, The Defiant Ones. Poitier was married to his first wife, Juanita Hardy, and the father of 4 children. And Carroll was still married to Monty Kaye, whom she spoke on destroying their marriage with this affair in her book, The Legs Are the First to Go. Now, this attraction between the two was instant, and this affair lasted for 9 years, with Carroll holding on to the promise of marriage. She also spoke on them divorcing their spouses, and she did, but at the time, he didn't. And when he did, he stalled on marrying her. Carroll was still in her early 20s during the start of this affair, and Poitier was over 30. So she spoke of being submissive to him because that's what he wanted. And she was in love with him, so that's what she did. He wanted to live with her for 6 months without her daughter present, and Carroll refused. Now, this is what Carroll stated, but he stated that he wanted to wait 6 months after his marriage because he didn't want to just jump up and marry again so quickly. And this was what he stated. So there's two conflicting stories about that. And Carroll started dating other men, which is something that drove him crazy. And the relationship started becoming off and on. And in her book, she spoke on this affair as being a relationship that went nowhere. And that was the truth. Almost a decade and nothing to show for it. I feel that he was in love with her, but it was a good thing that they didn't marry. In 1961, together, they starred in Paris Blue, along with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. Now, after I upload this video, I'm going to watch this movie, even if I have to pay for it, because Paul Newman divorced his wife in 1958 to marry Joanne Woodward. And they quickly married after this divorce. So I'm really curious about the chemistry in this movie. I just don't feel like it was a coincidence bringing these four people together for Paris Blue. And in 1962, she was the first Black woman to win a Tony for her role in No Strings, playing the character Barbara Woodward. In 1968, Carroll was offered a groundbreaking television role, Julia, playing a nurse and single mother who lost her husband in Vietnam. This was the first television role for a Black woman who was not playing a domestic role. She won a Golden Globe Award for her first year of this highly rated show and was also nominated for an Emmy. Carroll started dating David Frost in 1970. He was a very popular English journalist and talk show host. He was a bachelor who was considered a good catch for the ladies, and he did his share of dating. Within 2 years, they were engaged to be married. They had an engagement party and everything, and Carroll met and married Freddie Guzman on a whim, and David Frost had no idea about this until the information was released to the public. Carroll had to know or heard something about Frost in order for her to do that, because her and Guzman didn't even make it to 3 months. Now, she later said that Frost is one of the best things that ever happened to her. And what else would she say? It all backfired on her, because I really believe she married Guzman for some sort of spite, and maybe not, we will never know. I believe she would have stayed married to Frost for more than 3 months because they formed a relationship. She admitted Guzman was just on a whim, and he was allegedly abusive. Frost was the one that got away, most definitely. That whole situation had to be embarrassing, especially after 3 months. Carroll starred in 2 more movies after Paris Blue, 1967, Hurry Sundown, and 1968, The Split, and she starred in a host of television shows before she scored her starring role in 1974's Claudine, where she played a welfare mother of 6 children, with James Earl Jones playing her love interest. Now, the part of Claudine was written for actress Diane Sands, who took ill from cancer, and she requested that her good friend Carroll take over the role as Claudine. Now, Carroll was the last actress who Hollywood would have chosen for this role, but luckily they gave her a chance, and she won an Academy Award nomination for this role. Unfortunately, Sands passed away before the movie was released. Carroll met her third, much younger husband, Robert De Leon, on the set of the movie Claudine, and at the time he was working for Jet Magazine as the managing editor. They wed in 1975. The marriage was short-lived. He died in a car accident just 2 years after they wed. Now, even the death of her husband brought about drama and gossip for Carroll. It was a rumor going around that her young husband committed suicide due to pressure that Carroll put on him to get more involved in the movie industry, and that made him unhappy, so they say. It was an ugly rumor, and instead of her receiving sympathy from losing her husband by death, people had something horrible to say instead. When it come to her love life, she just couldn't seem to catch a break. Unfortunately, it started from her marriage to her first husband. Carroll's father did not want her to marry outside of her race, but he loved his daughter and decided to accept her decision. But the black community was not as forgiving with Carroll, and she was criticized for who she dated and married up until people seemed to lose interest. Although she seemed to not care in the public, I do believe it bothered her. Carroll starred as Vivian in the 1979 classic movie I Know Why the Caged Birds Sing, which is the memoir of the poet and author and civil rights activist Maya Angelou. She played the character Ziona Haley in Roots: The Next Generation in 1979. And in 1984, she starred in the highly successful nighttime television soap opera Dynasty as Dominique Devereaux. Her first night appearance on this show was epic and highly rated. These nighttime soap operas and miniseries were very popular in the early 80s. You had Dallas, Knots Landing, which was two of my favorites, along with Dynasty, and then you had Falcon Crest, The Colbys, and Flamingo Road. Those are the ones that I didn't watch that much. Billy D. Williams played her husband for a minute on Dynasty. Now, they went to the same high school in real life and were classmates. Her character was moved to the Colbys, and I don't remember that, so yeah, it was another highlight of her career. Now, the 80s was a busy decade for her. She married Vic Damone in 1987, and the marriage lasted until 1996. Carroll played Marion Gilbert, the mother of Whitley Gilbert, in the popular television show Different World, and that was in 1989, which was a very memorable show. And Patti LaBelle played Dwayne Wayne's mother, Ardell Wayne, and everybody wanted to be on that show, and everybody was. She was just as busy in the 90s acting on a lot of television shows, but she had a few standout movie roles as well in the 90s, playing Eleanor Potter in the 1991 popular film The Five Heartbeats, and she looked amazing in that movie. She had a standout role as a voodoo woman in the 1997 movie Eve's Bayou. In that same year, Carroll was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she was very outspoken about her illness and recovery. Carroll continued to work until 2016 in movies, television, and theater. She had her own television special in 2010, Diahann Carroll, The Lady, the Music, the Legend, doing what she truly loved, and that was singing. In 2013, she starred as Nana Peoples in Tyler Perry Presents Peoples. Diahann Carroll passed away on October the 4th, 2019, from breast cancer. She was 84 years old. Diahann Carroll was a household name for years, even up until the 90s. I remember hearing the gossip about her as a child, but her talent overshadowed all of it. That's why she stayed relevant and working for all those years. Her career took off during a time when actresses were glamorous, and I remember that about her. She was a businesswoman, she had a wig line, she was a philanthropist, and even though she did a lot of interviews, I still get the feeling that the public never really got the chance to know her. And that's because she was born during a time when your personal business stayed personal. Yes, she wrote a couple of books and answered questions without giving full details. I believe she knew people would still form their own opinions, and she was right about that. I would like to thank you all so much for watching my video on Miss Diahann Carroll.